Morning, all. And so we've got a preview of tonight's game, and we've got all the news on the board for right now. Game three is tonight. Yep, game three. And Vegas and Dallas, first goal wins is apparently the rule to this. Now, also, what to me is not surprising, but has come out over the last couple of days, is that the Vegas Golden Knights are looking to re sign Robin Lehner long term. They want a long term extension for Lehner, and it makes a lot of sense. And again, for people who say, well, what will they do with Fleury? You can have two goaltenders. I don't think Leonard will break the bank for Vegas. They could move some money around if they need to, but I think having Leonard and Fleury next year would be a pretty smart move. You should have two goaltenders. If we've learned anything in these playoffs, it's having a good tandem makes a big difference. And all they have to do is look across the ice at Dallas, where Hudobin stepped in for Bishop and done a pretty good job, and realize, yeah, that's you have to have two goaltenders in this day and age. So, game one was a 1-0 win for Dallas. Game two was a 3-0 win for Vegas. Vegas played more physical in game two than in game one, and Ryan Reeves is getting a lot of the credit. Well, I don't want to take anything away from Reeves. I think it kind of takes away from what the rest of the team did as well. And so I think it was just a better team effort from the Vegas Golden Knights in game two than it was in game one. Did Reeves play a part in that? Sure. So for Dallas, don't buy into it. Don't pay a whole lot of attention. Don't engage. Just it's the same thing I told Vancouver. The more fired up he is, the more fired up against his teammates. Just stay out of it and just go out there and play the game to the best of your ability. And maybe get another hat trick from Kiviranta, which isn't going to happen. I mean, it's interesting because all of a sudden Kiviranta's got like this legendary status for his Game 7 performance against Colorado, but he's not that kind of player. He's not a big goal scorer. So I do find that part of the storyline interesting. Another thing that's interesting, and we'll see how this continues tonight, is between the four conference finals games. So between this conference final and the other one going on in the same city, but still with the East, 17 goals scored. That's 4.25 goals per game. Those are below the dead puck era of hockey. And it just proves that lower scoring games doesn't mean that they're not good games. And, we'll see if that continues. And that's including the fact that there's been an average of 2 goals per game in the West. And last night's game had 3 goals. If it wasn't for that 10-goal game in the first game between Tampa and the Islanders, we'd be looking at a much lower average. We're getting into like soccer numbers now. We're getting down to that level. And again, I've seen it before, and it's not technically a neutral zone trap, but it feels like that, and it's a similar setup, and we'll see whether or not that continues into next year. I think it does, but again, we'll see. Bruce Cassidy yesterday was named the Jack Adams winner, and that was, of course, before the game. And so I thought, well, I could do a video, but no. I'm not just going to do a video on Bruce Cassidy winning the Jack Adams. It does show a change in how the Jack Adams is awarded. So I'm not saying Bruce Cassidy doesn't deserve it. That's not true. But what's interesting is Boston was expected to be good. They were in the Stanley Cup Finals, and this year they were number one overall in the standings. That's not usually your winner of the trophy. Usually it's the team that surprisingly ended up in the playoffs. So Dave Tippett, you would have thought would have been a favorite. Rick Tocchet at times this year would have been a favorite. Maybe even Brindamore on some level because Carolina looked like they'd taken a next step. And here we are. It's Bruce Cassidy. So I'm not decrying it. I've said for years that the award has always been to the team that surprisingly makes the playoffs. And I always thought that was a weird way to decide who the best coach was. Hey, you're not supposed to be in the playoffs. That's because you got the best coach. And then 2 years later, those coaches were normally fired. Because, again, it's just as easy to fall back. So, yeah, congratulations to Cassidy. He went through a lot to get back to the NHL after his first trial run with Washington didn't go so well. And nice to see him win that. Now, player that I like, and I'm glad to see he's coming back after a year in the KHL, is Adam Cracknell. He signs a 1-year, two-way deal with the Edmonton Oilers to come back over to this side of the pond. And so kudos to him for returning and signing a two-way deal means he's going to make less in the AHL than he makes in the NHL. But, I like the guy. He can be a good energy forward who can fill in here and there, and he would definitely clear waivers if need be. Mike Smith also. They're not ruling out bringing back Mike Smith. It would be weird if both Calgary and Edmonton, after failing to live up to expectations, both decided to stay status quo. If both teams said, you know what, we're just going to leave it the same, that would be bizarre. And then maybe they make a trade with each other like they did last year, and maybe a couple of players as free agents just swap locations like last year. So if Smith stays with the Oilers, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it would hold them back because, and again, I'm not saying it's bad, just that if you want to advance, I think they need to make an improvement in net a little bit over Koskinen and Smith. And unless they still think Koskinen can do it, but Koskinen's in his 30s, Smith's in his late 30s, they need that young guy, and I'm not sure that they have that right now. I'm not sure. Maybe Stuart Skinner will be the guy, but I don't know. Alex Killorn has a hearing today. Yes, I know, and people are going to say, what about Barclay Goodrow? No hearing for Barclay Goodrow, hearing for Killorn. And definitely a lot of people seem to agree that the Goodrow hit was worse than Killorn's. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be a game, if it's going to be a fine. I'm thinking since it's an official hearing, it's going to be a suspension. I would figure probably one game, the same as Ryan Reeves got. And it was ugly, and Nelson, thankfully, is okay. Reportedly no concussion symptoms or anything after the game, so kudos to him on staying healthy despite two really brutal-looking hits. And I thought the Goudreau one might have been worse, but it's fine. It's fine. It's the NHL. Spin the wheel. We'll see what happens with Killorn. I figure it's going to be a game. And if Tampa showed anything last night, it's that they now have that reserve that Stanley Cup champions have, where when they're short on players, when they're dealing with a lot of these adverse situations, that they excel. So that's definitely what happened with Tampa yesterday. Now, speaking of things that are going on, there is discussions behind the scenes about how next year may look, and that the December start may very well be optimistic. That's the aim, is a December start. They may push it back to January, and there's a reason. There's a reason to the NBA is looking at pushing theirs back to January too. Is both leagues want to have fans in the stands. For the NBA, they lose 40% of their money if there's no fans in the stands. For the NHL, they lose, I think it's 38% of their money comes from ticket sales. So while it doesn't cripple the leagues not to have ticket sales, it hurts. Now, limited attendance would be possible now, honestly. With what we know and what we've learned and everything over the last 6 months, you could have limited attendance in buildings, but they want full attendance. So they're trying to push it back so that the idea is that maybe towards the end of the regular season, you would have full attendance, but at the start you could have like half. And I think that's what they're looking at. And bubbles for the regular season, Bill Daly has said, may not be practical. And I think this is players. I think this is players saying, I'm not going into a bubble for an entire regular season. And now they're saying they want an 82 game season, so we may not get an 82 game season next year, which honestly, I'm fine with. I would be fine with a 48 game schedule and rushing into the playoffs, because 48 game schedules are crazy. Every game's more intense, and every game is more important. It's sort of like baseball, where everybody kind of freaked out at the idea of a 60 game season. I think it's been better because the games are important. Every game feels like it's not, a 486 game season where there's triple headers all over the place. Like baseball, it feels like it's more important, even though more teams make the postseason. And in hockey, it definitely makes for a better season. And that's just me. But again, owners don't want to lose that revenue. So it's tough to sell owners on losing that amount of money, while it's tough to sell players on the idea of being away from their families for 82 games. So maybe they push the schedule back, and if in January things aren't any better than what they were in, say, June, when they came up with the bubble idea, maybe we have a bubble again, but it's a shortened season. So maybe it is a 48 game season. Maybe you only play within your own conference, and you have a 48 game season, and then you go to the 16 team playoffs. Almost anything is possible right now. So whatever ideas you may have, write them down, send them into the NHL, tell them I sent you. They're going to say, who? Oh, that guy. Yeah, to heck with that guy. So yeah, um, they want an 82 game schedule for obvious reasons. The more dire the financials get between now and the end of next season, the longer it's going to take for the NHL to get its money back to where it was prior to pandemic, and then the harder it is for them to turn a profit, as well as the harder it is for players to get the money that they feel like, hey, this is the prime of my career. This might be the only chance I get to make some real money, and so it's a balance where the owners don't want to lose money, the players don't want to lose money, and so the season may get bumped back for that reason. Now, whether or not we play games in the summer again is questionable. So before all this started, there was some speculation about, hey, the ratings could be huge in the summer. They haven't been, not in the South, not in the States. So the NHL's desire to see ratings move up has not been satisfied in the States. I will say this, though. Ratings have been down for most sports. And I know people are going to say, oh, it's because there's this whole culture thing. No, it's not just sports either. It's all across television. Ratings are just down. And so I really think that while ratings are important and that next TV contract is huge for the NHL, we may be seeing just a huge shift going on right now away from traditional viewing. And I know there's a lot of people that watch this channel that watch like all the pirate streams and all that. And so I think maybe just looking at ratings might be keeping it too simplistic. So hopefully there's other business indicators they have on whether or not the NHL's done well with hockey during the summer or not. And yeah, we'll see. Because again, if it worked out really, really well, they might say, oh, so we'll just keep hockey during the summer every year. But the other thing too is the Olympics are supposed to be next year, and I'm saying supposed to be because we don't know if they're going to have them. And so if we have an Olympics next summer, well, that would cut off the NHL because they're not going to be broadcast ahead of the Olympics south of the border. So that makes it a lot less likely to want to even give that a shot, and that would be a basketball thing too, where they're already going to be sending athletes to the summer games, and so you'd have to shut down, and just it becomes a huge logistical nightmare. So yeah, we'll see what happens with next season. It's going to be interesting. Drager. Darren Drager is reporting that clubs may very well be slashing cap for financial reasons, in that their internal cap might be in the low 70s. The salary cap's at 81.5 million. I don't know how you get down to 70 million for some of these teams. I don't know how. I'm wondering how many players are going to end up without a job. I'm wondering how many players are going to either get bought out or not signed to contracts and end up in the KHL or in European leagues because teams just can't afford to keep them together. And then what would happen after that? You could end up seeing a lot more rookies. You could end up seeing a lot more kids in the lineups than we normally would. And it could just be chaos for now. Because, again, for owners, they're not making money under the current situation. The whole bubble thing, the owners aren't making very much money, comparatively speaking, with what they normally would. And so they're going to look to slash their payrolls. They're going to look to slash their income. And, we're over 6 months into this. And it's just, it's a business thing. And we'll see what happens. It's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens with the NHL in the offseason and which players end up where. Add Jared McCann to the list of players who may end up being on the move. Apparently he's available. He's due for a raise, and Pittsburgh, with their cap situation, may very well be best to let him go because they may see him as being replaceable. He's a decent third-line option, third-line center, can play the wing as well, but they may very well just see him as being replaceable in the lineup. And the Penguins are definitely, by all accounts, open for business. And so I think the Penguins could look quite different next year than they do this year. But I don't think they're going to be the only one. I think there's going to be a lot of reporting from me between now and next season on guys getting bought out, guys signing new contracts, guys ending up in the KHL, and trades and all these things going on. It's going to be probably the most interesting offseason I've ever seen. So yeah, we'll see if McCann ends up somewhere else and where he ends up going. Mark Borowiecki, apparently, according to his agent, is going to test the market, and that's sad. The Ottawa Senators have lost a lot of veteran leadership, and they've lost a lot of players. They've got back a lot of prospects and future capital. Borowiecki really is in my eyes, anyways, the veteran leader on that blue line, and it would be a shame if he was gone. It would be an absolute shame. I think he's captain material, and so if he does hit the market, I would think that a lot of teams will definitely give him a call. There's a team down the street in Vancouver that would definitely give him a call. I would think Boston would definitely give him a call. And so those are just two off the top of my head of teams that I cheer for that I say, hey, I'd love to see Borowiecki for the right price on the blue line for either of those teams. He'll be very popular. I would say probably half the league would at least call and see what he's looking for, because he's not going to be. I wouldn't think he's going to cost a ton of money, but like I said, captain material, leader. He can mix it up. He can do the rough stuff. But he also showed this year he can put up some points. There's a little bit of skill there that maybe we hadn't seen before last season when he knew he was in a contract year. And so we'll see what that's worth in the offseason. So there you go. News of the day. Previewing tonight's game. I, of course, will be hoping that Dallas comes back. But Vegas really does look like they're on a collision course with Tampa. And that could be a fantastic Stanley Cup final if that's what we end up with. But Dallas still has something to say, and so does Barry Trotz. So do the Islanders. So we'll see how that turns out. I'll be here to report on it when that happens. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.